to our pitch on the snowflake generation. So what is the snowflake generation? They generally consist of 12 to 20-year-olds, so kind of our generation, you guys who I'm talking to now. And basically known as the snowflake generation because we're known as unique individuals that are fragile, and like a snowflake, if anyone turns up the heat, like an argument, or they say something to hurt their feelings, then they melt like a snowflake, but not in the literal term. So yeah, if I just hand over to Jude for our infographics.
These infographics are a good way of showing key information. For example, this infographic by Toby Dooley, he's put a definition by the Cambridge Dictionary. And the infographic by Toby Hill, he's put about what type of documentary we'll be doing, and we're going to make it similar to Vice.
The reason we've chosen this topic is because we feel like it's important to our generation as we're living in it and part of it. We also feel like it would influence a change by showing people that it's an important topic. So we want to create awareness, and we want to find out perspectives of other people and what they think of it, older and younger.
We chose to do a Vice-style documentary because it's more of an observational type documentary, because we're going to give a lot of facts to tell you about the snowflake generation, as well as not having an opinion on it and not showing what we feel about it. But we're also going to not attempt to persuade, and we're going to have trustworthy and I can't pronounce that. We're going to have people's opinions and enforced by fact too.
So here are some statistics. We start by this one here. You probably won't be able to read it, but basically it's the UK on top, US on the bottom. The dark blue is people who voted that too many people are easily offended by by people's comments or what they say. And then the lighter blue is people who voted that people need to be more careful about what they say. Now you can see that dominantly a lot of people agree that people are just too easily offended. So for example, a lot of people are just being snowflakes. If we go on to here, these are people saying that the government should promote the principle of community, people being coming together, and then there is people voting that they should promote self-reliance, which is the orange. Now a lot of people, so the boomers, they're kind of who are currently now older, they were quite equal on the matter. And then you go to people who now are still older than we are now, that say that there should be a lot more community. And you can see there's a big rise in people voting for community and a decline in self-reliance. Basically, a lot of people becoming reliant on each other and not having as much confidence in themselves. So they're becoming a lot more reliant on the community. And then there's also, these are just some percentages on how kind of young adults have the issues they've had with depression, anxiety, and issues and conditions that they may have not got help with. And there's up to nearly 50% in experience with anxiety, 45% with stress. So there's been a lot of, compared to previous generations, there's a lot of an increase in mental health issues due to how we've developed and how far we've come compared to how young generations were years ago when people were going to war, for example. I mean, that's quite an extreme example, but how we've changed because we may not have had the exposure that they would have had. So does anyone have any questions?
You say that you're doing an observational documentary. Is there anything in particular that you're going to observe?
So I think with what we'll be observing is we'll be looking at how the world is working with a snowflake generation, how older generations are with them, and then how young generations, so the people in the snowflake generation, see the world and how they react with it, because we want to show people how this has happened, why it's happened. We're not trying to persuade them, we just want to observe and show people how it's happening, and then they can make their mind up on it.
I don't know if you said it, I might have missed it. Who are you guys interviewing?
Oh yeah, so we'll be interviewing the people it directly affects, so the generation itself, people like me and my people in my group. We'll also be interviewing the older generations, their views on the young generation, because obviously the way it came about is the older generation is calling a younger generation a snowflake generation. So we'll ask people in older generations. We'll also talk to people who have a broad understanding on the matter, so experts and people who work with the council, for example, who then help people with potentially mental health issues that have come from being a snowflake, essentially.
And one other thing, in terms of balance, I'm not sure if you're going to disprove this or to just investigate it, but are you going to look into the argument that if your generation is seen as a snowflake generation, that it's the older generation's fault for sort of wrapping you up in cotton wool? Are you going to try and look at that balance, or are you just going to look at whether you are a snowflake generation or not?
So we're doing it off the basis that we already are, essentially. There's a large majority in the generation that kind of take on that label and that stereotype. So we're investigating how it's formed and how older generations, how they could have affected it, or how raising the young generation would have come from how the older generations have raised young generations, essentially.
Okay, that's great. Cheers, lads.